takeoff. Clear above and behind. Up away.
I've lived in London for most of my life, and the River Thames has always fascinated me. A cloudy current of history that shrouds secrets, lives, and untold treasures. It's the river that shaped our destiny, and in a way, the destiny of the world. But what is it now? A great muddy drain that's had its day, or a flowing artery of life in rude health? To me it seemed there was just one way to find out. Start at the end and go to the beginning, obviously.
You may think it's strange, but travelling this river from sea to source, there's always been a bit of an ambition of mine, and now the dream is on.
An RAF search and rescue helicopter was flying me downriver from London to get to my starting point, the Thames approaches in the North Sea. The plan, to be lowered onto an old Thames barge, the first of many boats that would take me to my goal, 200 odd miles away in the heart of England. Finally, contact. Now the tricky part of the operation, getting from here to there, 100 feet below.
About 210, probably be about 5 miles.
Manoeuvring a 10-ton helicopter into position is not easy, and I wasn't feeling quite that chirpy. But these fellas know their game.
That was great. Well, as operations go, that's pretty straightforward, isn't it? I mean, flat sea, no wind.
Well, correct, yeah, but the only thing is that things can go wrong. I want to go wrong, they go wrong quite quickly. So even the most benign conditions, you have to sort of be careful.
And these masts and sails, of course, cause a problem.
Well, exactly. I mean, you've got this one is about 60 feet above the deck. You've obviously got the one forward of that, and of course you've got all these stays, so you have to be a little bit careful.
Right.
But, was it okay today?
It was fantastic. Thanks for starting me on my journey. Good man.
Welcome.
Thanks a lot.
Good
I'll
luck.
let you get back.
Absolutely. Good luck.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
See you later. That's that then. Away we go.
It was time to consider the challenges ahead. My mission, to go from sea to source with one rule of engagement. I have to hitchhike the whole way. Now what this actually means is getting a lift on whatever craft I can lay my hands on, from my starting point right here in the North Sea to my destination 215 miles away in the corner of a field somewhere in Gloucestershire. It was fitting that winds alone set me on my way. Trading barges like the Greeter have plied these waters since the 19th century. The river, of course, is an ancient gateway to England, and one that's always needed defending. On board is Frank Turner, my guide for my first encounter.
They're quite alien structures, aren't they, in the middle of nowhere? Like Martian tripods, you know, H.G. Wells.
That's right.
War of the Worlds. Now that's a vessel that you've fixed up, so we're going to try and get on board that and get on. So let's see what happens.
Okay.
These gun emplacements stand ruined and desolate in an empty sea. They were erected in 1943 as the first line of defence against Nazi bombers heading to Blitz London. Now they're a time capsule slowly rusting into the waves, hiding a grim history. Inside, they say tattered 1940s pin-ups still hang on the walls. Bunk beds and discarded cigarette packets lie untouched for half a century and more. You can't actually get into the main body of the fort, but you can just about clamber aboard the lower platform.
Steady, Frank, you all right?
Yep,
Those rungs look a bit thin.
they are, but it's solid enough to take your weight. That's it.
Hard to imagine anyone more desolate.
It is really, but there we are.
So these forts, these gun emplacements were crucial. They're a big part of the war effort.
Absolutely. They shot down between them 22 aircraft and 30 plus doodlebugs.
What was it like living here? How did they exist from day to day?
It was a living which was full of frustrations, and because they were cooped up here and couldn't really do much, they tended to, well, go round the twist. Many people ended up in asylums as a result of living here. It was boredom that was the problem, and people, there were 3 people committed suicide, throwing themselves overboard.
Did they retrieve them?
Well, they certainly retrieved Sergeant Long, who went over the walkway, but not until he'd been in the water for 4 days and he'd been washed up and down in the tide. That incident led to a mutiny almost, at the end of their 6-week period, when the men went ashore. Most of them deserted because of that incident. They felt it was wrong that they weren't allowed to recover the body, and it was allowed.
It's a strange, eerie place, full of war. But these crumbling monuments also serve as a reminder of how crucial the Thames was to Britain and her enemies. A vital trade route, certainly, but one that also led to occupation. The Romans used the Thames, the Vikings came this way without so much as wiping their feet, and now, a little less gloriously, me. The Thames approaches are a notorious navigational nightmare, and here's why. Sandbanks. It may look benign enough, but the tides and currents rip and swirl in the estuary, creating dangerous plateaus of sand, hidden islands in the middle of the sea, revealed only at low tide. They have their ghosts too. 700 years ago, in Edward I's reign, British Jews were being expelled by the boatload. The story goes one ship's captain beached his vessel here, suggesting his passengers might like to stretch their legs. As the tide began to rise, the captain sailed off. No one stood a chance.
I put this old broom handle in, 12 minutes ago? And look at that. That much tide has come in. It is galloping in across the sands. So you can imagine the horrors those poor people went through. It really wouldn't have been very long before they were swimming and then drowning. Time for me.
The sun began to set on a picture that could have been a summer's evening 150 years ago. At the end of a long, exhilarating day, we drew into Whitstable on the southern tip of the estuary. How did the people of Kent know I was coming?
First night, first port of call. Hope it doesn't rain.
Whitstable is a surprising place. You almost have to pinch yourself that you're not in Cornwall, but in fact in estuarine London. And there are loads of historic towns like this along the shores. Of course, much has changed. The only thing that hasn't is the weather.
Oh, crucial stuff. Whitstable Yacht Club providing the weather forecast.
Right. Lovely.
How's it shaping up?
It's a good start, but not so good later on.
Good start. This is a good start.
Not bad.
This is a not so good coming in, isn't it?
You should have been here the last few days.
Oh, right. Well, that makes me feel better. So what are you saying, rain and...
Rain later. Wind's the critical bit for us. 3 to 4, which is fine, but it's increasing 5 to 6.
I hitched a lift on a small fishing trawler owned by Roger Cooper. Heading northwest to the Essex coast, we put the net down for 10 minutes just to see.
Look at that. There's my stopper. Not bad, is it?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. They're all very small, aren't they?
Yeah, we'll get them back quick. Yeah, he's too small.
You're joking.
No, he's undersized.
Is he?
Yeah.
All right.
If you're a Frenchman, you might eat him, but as we're English, we put him back.
Oh, we're English. Put him back.
Onto that bastion of Victorian excitement, Southend Pier. It's a mile long, but finding somewhere to come alongside in force 5 winds, as predicted, was not easy. In fact, our efforts were becoming a minor pierside attraction. I'd been expecting a more leisurely arrival on this peninsula of fish and chips. In the end, the old lifeboat ramp provided the answer.
Safe journey back.
Before you walk down the pier, I think you missed the last train.
Thanks for that.
Well, he was right. The train had gone, and yes, the pier is a mile long. What's already apparent to me is how alive the estuary is. The communities still exist. People's bread is very much on the waters. Here at Leigh-on-Sea, they've been harvesting cockles from the Thames estuary for as long as anyone can remember. Every day between June and November, thousands of boatloads arrive at the cockle sheds. Joe Deal is 74. His family have been cockling here for more than 100 years.
Well, I started working down here in 1942 when I was 14 years old. But it's changed completely since I've started. We used to cook about 25 baskets an hour, and now we cook 125 an hour. And it's all mechanically done now, whereas it all used to be done by hand. I love it. I do it. I get a living out of it, but I actually love it. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do anything else, you know. I wouldn't want to be up in the stock market making millions. I'd rather be working hard here just for a few pounds.
How many cockles do you think you processed over the years?
It's tons, honestly. Thousands of tons. Yeah.
You must hate the sight of them, don't you?
No, I love them. Yeah. Oh, yes, I love them. I eat between 2 and 3 pints. I've eaten 1,000 cockles this morning, comfortable.
That's why you've got such a good complexion.
Yeah, well,
isn't it?
probably, yeah, yeah. That's why I'm so healthy, yeah. They do the world of good cockles.
As we chatted, the tide had swamped the mudflats. Time to move on. And with hope in my heart, I tried to blag a lift to my next destination.
We will ride. Hello.
How do? Hello.
Belton Sailing Club.
Built my small craft club.
Small craft.
That's it.
I'm going to Canvey Island.
Yeah.
A small craft would be fantastic. Is there any way that somebody can give me a lift there? To Canvey Island?
Yeah,
And it's
try the boat. Yeah,
Really?
I can do it if there. Yeah, got a boat.
Well, what sort of boat have you got?
An 18 foot.
I'm not fussy.
No.
That's brilliant. Are you sure?
Yeah, sure.
Won't take too much time out of your day.
Nah. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Where is it? It's just out here.
Out there, yeah.
Excellent. We're on. Let's go. Here's my boat coming in now. She's called Domino, and I'll tell you what, it's not before time because look at this weather. I've no idea what it's going to be like out there. That's Canby up there, is it?
Yeah, Canby Point.
Very funny. That's it. Looking good, John.
Looking good.
Go on, my son. That's it, coming in. That's the ladder. Well done.
Righto.
Judd, thanks mate, you're a star. Fantastic. All right. Where on earth is this?
Well, this was a remote corner of Canvey Island, where huge walls hold back the sea, and with good reason. They used to refer to the Thames in these parts as the Brown God, and this god hasn't always smiled. In 1953, a full moon combined with a following wind to create a formidable tide. A violent tower of seawater swept up the estuary, taking a sleeping London by surprise. 300 drowned that night. Worst hit was Canvey Island.
That night, we were awakened by a loud knock at the front door, and there was a policeman there, and he said, "Harry, get out of this house." He said, "Because the tide is going to come in again, we think it's going to be even worse." And I had a little boy in my class. He was a lovely little boy, and he must have been about 7. And that particular night, he'd gone to stay with his grandparents, slept the night there, and unfortunately, him and his grandparents were drowned. We were off the island for 6 weeks, and when we come back to see his empty place and know that for him it was the end, that was very sad.
They got us on the back of this big lorry, and on the way through the high street going back off the island, there was on the rows across, there was the dead bodies were actually floating up the road and through the water, I mean, which is awful. The screaming is something that's always stayed with me. The screams of people, not realising at that time what it was, but then having realised what it was after. And they did say that there was people literally hanging to their roofs, waiting, hoping someone was going to come in a boat and rescue them. But there wasn't that many that did get rescued, unfortunately.
Of course, Canvey is now well defended against the perils of unpredictable weather. To me, the saddest thing was how these people had survived the Blitz and the Second World War, but had succumbed 8 years later to a frightening combination of moon, wind and tide. The harbour master's boat took me back across to the Kent side. Slowly, I was creeping upriver. Here, Gravesend, another town steeped in maritime tradition, and its history is verging on the extraordinary. Pocahontas may be a famous Disney character, but in fact she's a cartoon legend that actually lived and died in Gravesend. A Native American, she came to England in 1614 after marrying an English settler, but she died of TB and now lies here at St George's Church near the High Street.
All ships, Port Control London with the river broadcast 1900. Navigation information is a boom lowered down on Shoalhaven Branch.
Also here is the river equivalent of air traffic control, one of the nerve centres of the Port of London Authority who control the tidal Thames. Most of the vessels are heading for Tilbury, surprisingly to me, Britain's 3rd largest port.
Port Control London.
Apparently we're meeting up with the Grande Brazil later. We'll be on board the tug and we're going to take her into Tilbury. Is she actually on the charts yet?
She's actually, yeah, she's just past the East Margate. Just come up for the Princess Channel. That's her just there.
That's her just there?
Actually zoom into the vessel. If you click on there, she's just up just below 9 knots at the moment, coming in.
You can actually tell what speed she's doing?
Yes, yeah, the system tracks, and we've got the facility just to click on the vessel and pick up the speed.
So effectively, you know of every single vessel that's in the estuary pretty well? Or you could.
That's right. The reporting vessel must call us, and then we identify the vessel by tagging them on the radar system.
2 days into my journey, and already endless proof this river is alive and kicking. It's a fine thought. It had been a long day, and I'd bartered a bed on a tug called the Sun Thames. Although Starlight Thames would have been more appropriate, we were instantly off to guide the mother of all container ships into Tilbury Lock. Dozens of vessels like the Grande Brazil pass through here every week, delivering millions of tons of cargo onto the Essex shore. On board, thousands of containers holding anything and everything from cars to corks.
It's an incredible sight. The amazing thing is with such raw power there, it's such a delicate operation with these guys just guiding it in. There's that much room.
In the event, it took 3 hours for the vessel to be safely delivered to the dock, and for me, at last, a welcome berthing with my bunk. It's 7 a.m. on day 3 of my journey, and already I'm on the water, leaving Gravesend in my wake. My plan, to get 20 miles upstream to Greenwich by the end of the day, hopefully. But first, a short hop across the river to Tilbury. Now, as soon as you get talking to the people who work on these waters, you quickly realise it's in their blood.
We have a claim to fame in the family. My father, it was started off in this job as cook and went on, but he left the job and became a captain of a tanker that ran up and down the Thames quite regularly. And one day, a little accident, he actually went through Southend Pier. So it's not something you can live down in this job, because everyone's got a great memory, and all the papers at the time, they called him, the Sun was great, they called him Captain Shut-Eye. Because of course all the papers, you know, and being in this job, the label sticks.
When I joined, it was at its zenith. It was ships everywhere, and could get a bit hairy, especially going around Blackwall Point when there's about 4 ships, a couple of barges, and a couple of lighters underway with sweeps on. But it just all added to the I don't know.
Romance.
So the romance, yes, absolutely, the romance. It was good, mind you. It was not without incident, because in those days we'd have a lot of fog. If you remember the big smogs that we had. And it was quite often ships would go aground or collide, and it was a chance to get salvage. You just see a mass of tugs charging off, and the first one's there to get a tow rope up, got the job.
The somewhat glamorously named International Cruise Terminal, or more realistically, Tilbury Landing Stage. This rather dilapidated, faded facade hides a stirring past. One way or another, this floating platform was the bridge to an alien world. You stood here filled with expectation or sadness. Here, thousands of emigrants said goodbye to their loved ones, often forever. Ships bound for Australia, New Zealand, and all parts of the empire. Here too arrived new hope. For example, in 1947, the Windrush docked from Jamaica with Britain's first flush of Caribbean immigrants. The place echoes with the happiness and tears of more than 100 years of humanity on the move. It means so much to some. When they die, they have their ashes scattered at Tilbury. Alongside the passenger terminal are the docks, opened in 1886. Nowadays, the romance is gone, with cargo hidden in bleak containers. But not so long ago, it was very different. Like all London's docklands, goods were manhandled, and the variety was staggering. Sugar, cowhides, rubber, rags for papermaking, even live animals. Charlie Mercer first came to work at these docks in 1948.
Coming out of the Navy and coming into docks and see how they had to get a job, it was so degrading. Because if your face never fitted, you didn't get a job. What happened, if there was a car job come in, there'd be 50 or 60 people scramble with their cars to try and get that foreman to pick them up. But he may only want 15, 20 men. So the others were disappointed. We used to do a lot of Indian cargo from the Indian boats. We used to do bundles of rags from Bombay. Now you imagine bundles of rags running alive with everything. Scorpions, we've had scorpions down the hole. Yeah, I'm not kidding you. In the 50s and 60s, your hook, if you never took your hook to work, you might as well go home. Because your hook, you use that on all your cargoes. If you was doing tea, discharging tea down the ship's hole, you've got when you start off, it's all cases of tea. Right, you stick your hook there, your mate sticks his hook there. You lift the case up, right, and you clear away to land a board to put the tea in. To me, a docker was the salt of the earth. I've gone round a dock with a sock, an old sock, collecting for someone who's out, because there was no dole money like it is today. If you didn't go to work, you didn't get paid.
Of course, times have changed since then, and Charlie barely recognises the docks now. But Tilbury is a significant part of the Port of London, which sees 26,000 commercial vessels moving every year. It is the third largest port in the country. Just a few hundred yards downstream, the solid impregnability of 17th century defences. Tilbury Fort harks back to Henry VIII's day. Later, in the Napoleonic Wars, General Gordon of Khartoum fame beefed them up. But this version is chiefly down to a Dutch raiding party.
The Dutch in 1667 were the ones who actually got up this far the river and actually raided Gravesend, pillaged and burnt buildings. And it was after that the governments and the king thought, well, we ought to have some better defences here. And so Tilbury Fort was built from the 1670s onwards, and has been defending the river and the capital right up to the late 19th century. Queen Elizabeth I came here during the threat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, and she actually arrived just opposite the fort here, came in and inspected the works, the defensive works, and then made her famous speech to the 20,000 troops who are here. I have but the body of a weak and feeble woman, but the heart and stomach of a king, and a king of England too. I mean, it is the richest part of all her speeches that she ever made, and it was here in West Tilbury, at Tilbury Fort.
Even the infamous Robinson Crusoe had his origins in Tilbury. Author Daniel Defoe lived nearby. They say his next-door neighbour was a man called Friday. Ridiculous but true, allegedly.
Hello.
Hello, Nick. Welcome on board.
Good to be here.
Time was moving on. I fixed up a lift with a working boat heading a few miles upriver towards Greenwich via Dartford Bridge.
This is a big landmark on our journey. It's the first bridge spanning the Thames, the QE2 bridge, the Dartford Bridge. Big achievement.
On the way, a chance materialised to see firsthand one of the river's oldest trades, now operated by a man and a bumblebee. Like all Thames people I'd met so far, Dave Pearce proved to be generous to the core. He didn't bat an eyelid when I proposed he give me a lift and let us film him at work. It's only day 3 and already it's goodbye to boat number 7 and hello to number 8. A little vessel and not too popular with a common eel. Eel fishing used to be a huge industry, thousands of tons hauled by dozens of working boats.
There's loads of them there, look.
Now there's only Dave.
Fine fish.
Do you eat them?
I must admit I had some smoked ones the other day, and they're not too bad. But jellied and mash, no.
You don't like them?
No.
You spend your life catching them, but you don't like eating them?
Nah, not likely.
Really? Why not?
It's an acquired taste. I wouldn't say I don't like them, but I don't enjoy them. I can eat them, but not for me. Cod and chips on Friday night, that's all right.
Cod and chips? Ill for sure. Could I buy one off you for my supper?
Yeah, you can have. What you got? You got this leader that lays on the bottom, standing up like that.
Yeah.
And eels, they scavenge up and down the river. So once they hit that, can't go for it, so they sort of work their way along it. So they go along it.
And come into there.
Then they go for like one track, which is there, through the second one. And once they get for that third one, they hit the end, try and come back out.
And they can't.
They can't because in the trap sort of thing. So you don't need no bait, they're just work on their principle of being nosy. You go to sign anything, job fisherman. They look at you thinking, fisherman in here? Nah, but I am, and that's the truth of it. It's a good lifestyle, but you never get rich.
So you must know these waters like the back of your hand, don't you?
Oh yeah, from Dartford Bridge to Tower Bridge. It's sad, I even know all the bottoms. I know where it's chalk, where it's mud, where it's rocks. Because over the years, all useless information to anyone else, but to me, it's important. So, I don't know, you just think like a million, I suppose.
Think like an eel?
Must do. I don't know why I do half what I do. I just think I fancy over there for no reason. You just do it. It must be something in me to tell me to do it. Just experience over the years, really. My life since that way. Forever, I hope. Don't want to change it now. Suits me.
It's great to hear, isn't it? He's just a short eel swim from the madness of city life. Dinner being organised, I decided to stop for the night at Erith.
Where's the local chippy?
Next morning, I awoke in the bar room of an old Norwegian ferry.
Decent.
Home to the kind members of Erith Yacht Club. The Thames is fascinating because it hides so much, and you don't have to look hard to touch history. As the tide goes out at Erith, the remains of an ancient landscape are exposed. Prehistoric trees that grew more than 5,000 years ago.
These ancient forests stretch all the way along the foreshore there. To me, it's just incredible that, 2,000 years ago or more, I would have been walking under a canopy of leaves and a grassy, leafy glade. That's the incredible thing about the Thames. It's just constantly veiling and revealing our history.
Onwards and upwards from a small boat to one designed to cause a stir. The unique 50 metres long Thames bubbler. When oxygen levels are low in the river, the fizz is restored by Thames Water's bubbler. She helps keep the Thames alive and is one reason why Dave Pearce catches so many eels. The river is now healthier than it has been for 200 years. The Thames Barrier, an engineering masterpiece, opened in 1983. The solution to a nightmare besieging Londoners for centuries. And it's actually been raised more times than you'd think.
Flooding's not new to London. 1928 saw 14 people lose their lives. And if we look at that flood risk area, it's about 45 square miles of London. But it's what's within that 45 square miles. There's about 400,000 homes. There's about 1.2 million people live and work there. So there's the London Underground system, there's 26 underground stations, there's the City of London, Parliament, 10 Downing Street. They're all within that flood risk area. Damage estimates are of the order of about £30 billion that could happen to that £80 billion worth of property. So there's a mammoth magnitude of risk area that we're here to protect. So 53 flood came along, we had to do something. And really, after a lot of designs, the barrier was seen as the best method of stopping that tidal surge from coming in and going through to London. People's lives you cannot underestimate, and That's our job, is to protect them. The Thames Barrier is a very powerful tool. We've operated 67 times since we became operational in '83, so that's 67 times that the water would have been going over those walls in London.
To me, the barrier is also quite an incredible sight and a fine place to pitch a tent.
Oh, no place like home.
I'd been travelling for 4 hectic days and at last able to record my thoughts on the journey so far.
So here I am at the end of day 4 at the Thames Barrier. And to me, having come all the way up from the North Sea, up the estuary, this point almost feels like the gateway to London. It's really very exciting. Not to be bowled over by everybody's positive attitude. They've been almost enthralled by this lunacy, this mad mission. I'm a bit knackered, a bit tired, but it's been fascinating. Hello, Derry, another boat. You must be the skip.
Good morning, Nick.
Hello, mate.
Come
Good to
aboard.
see you.
Thanks a lot.
What have you done with the sunshine?
Well, what have we done with it? Have you been on holiday?
No, you got holiday. That's from down there, would you believe? I think it's the wind.
As we motored on towards Greenwich, the Thames foreshore was a passing picture of river life. Light industry and ship work intermingled with bird life and rather dreary, repetitive residential developments that seem to crowd the Thames these days. And to emphasise the point, the architecturally splendid Greenwich hoved into view. They don't build them like that anymore.
All right, bye for now, Kate.
Greenwich was once the site of an early day Buckingham Palace. Henry VIII was born here, so was Elizabeth I. I was looking forward to my visit not just for the royal rich maritime history, but something a little more personal.
Now, I've come to Greenwich for a very good reason. It is because of this man, my great-great-grandfather, Captain William Ash. He lived in the late 19th century in South Devon, Hope Cove, where my parents still live. Now, he was a sea captain, and Greenwich holds many of his secrets.
I walked the way Elizabeth I walked when Sir Walter Raleigh laid out his cloak to meet the archivist at the National Maritime Museum, Lisa Verity.
So, Lisa, what have you found?
Well, what we have are William Ash's certificates. In the mid-19th century, people who went into the Merchant Navy, men who went into the Merchant Navy, had to qualify, they had to take examinations, and they were issued with these documents. And these are his certificates of competency.
And so, presumably, somewhere here will be his signature. There it is. So that is the actual signature of my great-great-grandfather.
William Ash, that's right.
It's interesting because my parents still live in Hope Cove, where William Ash lived, and they've got a ship and a bottle of the Mary Ann, and this is the actual. That is a schooner, the Mary Ann. To Newfoundland, and any other islands in the North Atlantic, Labrador, and places in the continent of Europe. So this was identifying the areas that he was permitted to travel.
That's right, yes. And here you see the provisions that they were issued with.
So per person on a Sunday, they can have a pound of bread, a pound and a half of beef, half a pound of flour. Captain Ash himself would have filled all this up.
He'd have
apart
filled
from
it out, yes.
So again, this would be him, would it? Incredible. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
It's amazing.
Greenwich has been a tourist trap for centuries. Nowadays, it's de rigueur to split yourself into both east and west along the Zero Meridian at the famous Royal Observatory.
It was founded in 1675 with one purpose, and that was to enable people to find their position at sea. Because back in the 17th century, they would never know their longitude, and the first you might hear was the breaking of waves in the middle of the night, and the next thing you'd crashed into the coast of Africa because you had no idea of your longitude. The purpose of the ball was to give accurate time to people in ships in the docks. The docks were behind us, and the time ball could even be watched from the City of London, and some of the clockmakers would set their telescopes to watch it drop at 1 o'clock, and they could set their clocks by the dropping of the time ball. I mean, it is fantastic to be actually at the site, working in the buildings that have constituted the Royal Greenwich Observatory, which I have to say is probably the most famous name of a scientific institution in the whole world, and that's why so many people come here.
Hello, is that Julian? Hello, Julian, it's Nick Clark here. Hello, I don't know if you've heard about this, but I'm making this sort of rather insane journey all the way up to the source of the Thames. Word has reached you. Okay. Well, word reached me that you might just be able to offer a bit of a lift some way upriver. I'm at Greenwich at the moment. Is that possible? As far as you can take, I mean, I'd like to really get to Tower Bridge by tonight, if that's possible. But where shall I meet you? I know the Trafalgar pub, funnily enough. Excellent. Well, I'll see you there. Bye for now. There we go. What a man. Next lift. No idea where that is, actually, but still.
Well, the rendezvous was in fact a set of steps, once watermen's steps, used for centuries to pick up passengers to be ferried across the river. The London Thames is lined with these ancient equivalents of bus stops.
By the old days, Julian.
It is indeed. Where the last waterman set foot on these steps.
Let's chat in there.
Yep.
There we go.
Jump quick. That's it. How do you do?
How do you do? Good to see you. Thanks very much for giving me the lift. Brilliant. When you think of the river, you think of it as this lovely, calm, placid, serene thing. And look at it, it's really choppy. It's like being at sea almost.
Well, I mean, it's historic. What's happened is that because they, over the centuries, they built on the riverside and reinforced the banks and so on, that now the water's contained, so the movement of these larger boats just bounces off the sides, and it just creates more waves. So you get quite confused water near the top of the tide, and then if you get wind over the top of it, it gets really interesting.
Unbeknown to me, Julian, who lives on a boat in Deptford Creek, had organised my next lift, the rather brilliantly named Zommerdroom, which fittingly is Dutch for summer's dream.
The towers loomed large as I approached the heart of this great city. Thanks for organising this, Julian.
That's all right, my pleasure.
What a surprise. Look at it, she's beautiful. I never expected this. It's an unexpected pleasure, totally. It's just fantastic. Thank you for having me.
No, I'm glad you could manage to, you put your thumb out so we decided to pick you up for hitchhiking.
I know, it's brilliant. Now, what about this vessel? She's beautiful, isn't she?
Yeah. This is one of the first boats that was brought over in King Charles II, actually. They had these boats on the Thames, brought over from Holland. Sailing was brought over from Holland. That's why it's called yachting, it's the Dutch name. They used to race these boats, and that's when racing started, when they used to race the cargo home, and gradually they got used as leisure boats for people to enjoy racing in its own right.
So, Dido, what's the plan now? How far can you actually take me? So I'm rather hoping to get up to sort of around Tower Bridge area.
Well, I've spoken to the bridge master, and he said there's two slots going through. One's going through at 3:30. Opening the bridge up for us. So
opening the bridge for us?
They're going to open the bridge. Yeah.
You're joking?
Yes, yeah.
Well, 1 minute I'm in Greenwich, next minute I'm going under Tower Bridge. Incredible.
On to the Pool of London, for more than 1,000 years the Port of London. And here the site of Execution Dock, where pirates like Captain Kidd danced the hempen jig, in other words, were hanged. Afterwards, their bodies laid out to be covered by 3 tides, just to make sure. Things have changed immeasurably, especially in the last 70 years. These pictures were shot in 1930 and depict a river life long gone. To me, it's tragic the Thames has lost so much working traffic, and that our rivers and waterways have been, for the most part, ignored as a means of transporting freight and people. This used to be the artery of London. Why not again? At least the rubbish barges still come and go with the tide, and right now Zomerdroom making an historic passage beneath a bridge that first opened in 1894.
Such a stunning sight.
Look at that. Look at all these people watching.
But what's exciting is the fact that I didn't realise it's really important that the river takes priority over the road here. That's about the only part of London that I've known the river actually comes first.
Oh, that's quite a positive thing,
it's
isn't it?
very positive, extremely important.
This part of the Thames is awash with history, and seeing it from the waterline offers a whole new perspective on London's past. I left Dido to sail the moody Thames without me and considered London's bridges. Tower Bridge is the first one you come to as you sail upriver, in the city anyway, and I went up inside for a closer look. Now seen as commonplace in the 1700s, these bridges caused a riot of protests from the watermen who made their money ferrying people and goods across the river. Today, 150,000 vehicles cross Tower Bridge alone every 24 hours, during which time the Great Road will part and lift roughly 3 times. Upper walkways were closed because they were never used. People preferred to stay below and watch the wonder of Victorian technology. But Dido was focused on getting Zomerdroom home, and it was time for me to consider my next move. I hadn't really stopped since the North Sea, and well, quite frankly, after 5 days, you need a decent wash. So, only one thing for it, the hobo, to some consternation, shambled into the posh waterfront hotel. I'd been surrounded by water for days, but none of it as appealing as this.
Oh.
As dusk falls, London throws off her imperial greyness and dresses beautifully for the night. Quite magical, a different city entirely. Humbled and refreshed, at 8 o'clock the next morning I thumbed a lift with the harbour master's launch. Here I was at peak hour on an empty river, while London's commuters battled through road and railway hell. I was heading for Queenhithe, an ancient monument right in the heart of the city. But at low tide, the only way to get there was on foot. I wonder what the ferrymen would have made of the crossing that wobbled, the Millennium Bridge. Indeed, its wobble was so famously bad, when it opened, it had to be closed for repairs. At Queenhithe, the river again unveils the past. With archaeologist Gustav Milne, I was actually walking on crumbled history, trudging across nearly 2,000 years. Even the Romans had built wharves right here.
Well, Gustav, we've just taken 5 minutes to walk from the steps to this point, and we've discovered all manner of goodies, haven't we?
There's tons of stuff here. This is because the river was used, or the foreshore was used as London's dustbin for many years. So it's all here. We've got all the detritus of the ages. These are the clay pipes, which are fag ends of the day. This is a very small bowl. You see how tiny that is, and that's quite an early one. That could be 16th or 17th century. And this is the type of pipe that you would be smoking when you went to the Globe Theatre to see Shakespeare's plays.
And at this time, tobacco, of course, was quite expensive, so it would have been a fairly well-off merchant or somebody who was
got to come
puffing away on this.
You don't just pop out to the newsagent to get tobacco. You've got to go to Virginia to get it. So it's quite a long walk.
And bits of pottery?
Pottery, yes. Well, we're standing on it. There's fields of it. The blue stuff tends to be what we archaeologists call later stuff, and what we archaeologists call early stuff is this green stuff. This is medieval. This is 13th, 14th or 15th century pottery, and it's been here rolling up and down the foreshore for 600-700 years. So
do you ever find anything even more intact?
The big things we do find are things like shipwrecks and boats, which do turn up from time to time, even in the city. Well, nails are very, very, very exciting, because nails like this are actually not just any old nail. These are shipbuilding nails or ship repair nails, and it's probably medieval or 16th century in date. So that's pretty old. It's probably older than these pipes. So that's one of our oldest finds so far. London is a great maritime centre, so you'd be repairing boats the whole time, and you'd repair them on the foreshore. This was actually not just a beach in the sense of Brighton Beach. This is a beach in the sense of a working space.
Of course, both the city and the river have changed beyond measure. Where in this 18th century canaletto there are boats and foreshore, there is now a road. The metropolis has expanded into the river.
– 140 years ago, right now, I would have been walking on thin air, because this embankment wasn't here. The river frontage went all the way up to Somerset House.
Tributaries still run into the Thames, you just can't see them. This rather unlikely hole under Blackfriars Bridge is the River Fleet. And this is how it used to look, a thriving creek, alive with wharves and trade. Still, I suppose time moves on, and it had for me. I needed to organise my next lift, and with passenger boats the only thing available, I tried my luck.
Any chance of lift with you lot, or can you give me any ideas about what I could try?
You can try the 2 o'clock boat, Queen Elizabeth, goes up to Kew Gardens.
Kew Gardens?
Yeah, you can't get no boats to Putney anymore.
Why not?
Piers are privately owned at Putney now, so you can't stop there. Yeah.
What about you?
Well, we're going to Kew Gardens and Richmond and Hampton Court at 12 o'clock.
12 o'clock?
Yeah.
No, I've got to be here for a couple of hours. I've got to meet you with the Lord, you know.
Yeah.
Yes, next an appointment with a peer of the realm. The headache of my onward journey would have to wait, though time and options were not on my side. I made my way on foot to Westminster to meet up with Lord Moynihan, a former Olympic cox.
Colin, this place is just steeped in history. The connection to the river and the Houses of Parliament goes back a long way, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, it's an extraordinary variety. Just here, for example, in King James I's reign, in 1620, an inventor, a sort of fairly crazy Dutchman called Van Drivel, designed a submarine. Now, bear in mind in those days that the only way he was actually going to get it to move was to row it. And he submerged it at the other end of the Houses of Parliament and rowed it under in front of the king, who was mightily impressed. And this is the first successful submarine example that people have noted in history. One of the most impressive parts of the Palace of Westminster were the steps. And the steps made history at the start of the Civil War. It was a famous occasion when King Charles I came down to Parliament. He wanted to arrest the principal MPs who'd been speaking out against him. 5 of them escaped down these steps and got away. And then famously the Speaker turned and said, "I have neither eyes to see nor tongue to speak in this place, save as the House is pleased." And at that point, that was really the start of the Civil War, because the Lords the following day
came on side with the commons, standing up against the king. And at that point, he had to flee, and the 5 members who'd come down these steps and escaped from the palace by boat were welcomed back in jubilation into the chambers. I've lived, still do, right alongside this river, and have coxed on it through all my early days of rowing, and then building up with the Oxford squad, and then had the good fortune to be with the national squad for 2 Olympic Games. And the training was done down here on the river. But knowing the river then, understanding its moods, coming to love it and to respect it, that's been part of my life and will always be this.
The river was all my life right now, and it wasn't doing me any favours. I needed to get on and was phoning every boating connection I could think of.
It's a bit of an emergency, to be honest. Have you got any ideas? On a boat, yes. No? Thanks anyway. Always rains when it starts to go wrong. Are you the yacht club? Any other numbers that I could try, or? Really? Oh well. Well, thanks for thinking about it anyway. Thanks. Bye-bye. Yeah, maybe next time. Thank you.
I was beginning to feel stranded, but then the rowing master from Westminster School called.
Hello? Ah, Mr. Riches. Hello there. You might be able to help. Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you.
Success at last. I headed towards the distinctive outline of Lambeth Bridge. By tradition, it's decked out in colours chosen by the Archbishop of Canterbury, resident of the adjacent Lambeth Palace. Here too, in the graveyard, the mutiny on the Bounty's most famous Captain William Bligh, who's buried in the churchyard. And in his honour, atop the bridge, the cargo of that voyage, not pineapples, but breadfruit.
Here's our man.
At last, David C.D. Riches, Westminster School's head of water, that is to say rowing, kindly re-energised my flagging journey at Vauxhall. I'd been in London for more than 24 hours and needed to press on.
Well done. Thank you very much. Good to meet you.
CD's HQ is in fact in Putney, 4.5 miles upriver, where the school's boat club is based, and where he'd offered to put me up for the night. It was great to be back on the water, heading upstream. My goal, the source, was still 160-odd miles away, and every bridge passed under represented good progress. As we sped by, the amphibious tourists splashed in for their trip on the waterborne trail. Like me, they'd soon learn how Battersea was originally a fishing village. Now its derelict power station is its most famous landmark.
That's the great thing about the Thames, isn't it? It's just all these hidden bits of history that nobody knows about.
Yeah,
like this one.
You've got the entrances to quite a few canals where you can actually disappear into London and in fact underneath London, and then of course much of it is covered over, and you come into tunnels, narrow tunnels, and eventually you can pitch up in Regent's Park and go in the Regent's Canal, go to Little Venice, if your boat's small enough and you're low enough to get around, and just come straight off the river.
Putney at last, and time for a sneaky pint as CD went back to work on the river.
So here I am in Westminster School's boating house, all at my Todd. It's all right, I've got my mattress, my sleeping bag, bit of a party going on next door, but I think I'll sleep through anything, quite frankly. What a day. And now here in leafy Putney. You know, I went to the pub earlier, Friday night, loads of people out, having a good time, and I just looked at them and I thought, I don't need this. I don't want to be here. I want to get back to the river. Oh dear. Still 2 weeks to go. Oh my God.
Next morning, while all those fit types did their thing, I did mine. But I needed the energy because I was about to join Westminster Boys Rowing 8 out on a training session for Henley, something I was to regret. Apart from anything else, this was a good way for me to get to Hammersmith, I thought.
I'll show you how it's done.
We've just bought this boat, and it's very expensive, so...
Is it? I'll try and look after it.
Now, in a plain and simple rowing boat, I've always considered myself pretty handy. But, surprise, surprise, this was to prove a different ball game. And one of some amusement to my shipmates.
We'll go off
They're wearing pink vests and they're laughing at me? Now, watch yours truly very carefully at the far end of the boat. Needless to say, that shouldn't have happened. But we made it to shore, although not quite intact.
All right, guys, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye. Show them how it's done. Thanks very much. Good luck at Henley.
A little breakage had occurred to their £17,000 boat.
Whoops.
Has it actually broken?
Yeah, we snatched it.
Oh well.
Just send you the bill. It was a free
Oh, sorry. How much does that cost that then?
Back up.
I'll send you a check. No, I will. Disaster. Thank you very much.
Brand new boat. Well done.
Very often shame.
Virginal breakage.
Brand new boat and I've wrecked it. I'm mortified.
So just be very careful turning around into the street.
I do apologise.
They're coming into the boathouse. Don't go down, please. Go down.
He's got a bit of a fearsome reputation as well.
Right,
No, I'm really sorry about that.
I've got all of your rigor in my hand. Do you want this as a memento?
All right then. Are you very cross?
I'll better keep that one. I'll keep that bit, you can have that.
So how new is this boat?
It's about, we took delivery of it about a month ago.
Right. £17,000.
Hasn't been out a dozen times yet.
Right.
So we did pretty well.
Finally, would you say I've got a future in rowing?
Everybody has a future in rowing. Some take longer than others.
Yes, the phrase coot, swan or even duck to water not applying to me in any way, shape or form. There was only one thing for it. With the sun over the noon yard arm, I decided to appreciate the morning in a traditional Thames fashion. The Dove at Hammersmith is famous because Rule Britannia was written there by James Thompson. Some claim he also died there. His death, no reflection on the quality of the beer, I'm sure. Well, 6 days on the river, and I reflected once again on the good spirit of Thames people, most recently displayed by the great sportsmanship of a master and a coach at Westminster School. putting me up and putting up with a boating buffoon. The London Wetland Centre, on the 7th day of my journey from sea to source. I'd been woken by a dawn chorus of the urban kind. I'd got special permission to camp at the centre in Barnes, an amazing place, a green oasis on the fringes of inner city London, a wildfowl and bird reserve, a natural haven in the metropolis. We may be on the Heathrow flight path, but the Thames is also a critical airborne route for bird life.
We actually lie, if you like, along the bird superhighway, and Westminster is only a few wing beats for a bird away from us. So birds, migratory birds coming from the continent, come up the Thames estuary into the city and pass directly over the site as a consequence, and will drop in either to breed or to overwinter.
This protected site was about to be home to a childhood hero, Ratty from Wind in the Willows.
We've lost 90% of the British water vole population in the last 15 years or so. During my working lifetime, in fact, we've seen this decline. And if we don't do something about re-establishing populations, we could well find that they become extinct in our lifetimes, which would be tragic. And American mink are the most serious problem that the water voles face now, because they are literally eating them to extinction. It's everyone's favourite creature, I mean, right up there at top of the pops as far as it comes to British wild animals, and yet the decline has been more dramatic than that of the rhino and the tiger that we see on television all the time. Well, what Rob is doing now is checking the health and the weight of the animals, checking the sex. He will then release the animal into this container. The water vole can burrow its way out at its own leisure, if you like, and establish residence in the nearby reed beds and wonderful habitat here.
So this is it, moment of freedom. Oh, hello, he's gone.
Away he goes.
Away he goes.
From Ratty's new residence, it was a mere hop to Chiswick. Peter McCower owns and lovingly maintains this old Thornycroft boat. She's called Daphne 3, and at the tender age of 79 has a claim to fame as a Bond girl.
Well, Peter, Daphne 3 is a lovely boat, isn't she?
Well, I think so, yes, definitely, but it's a love affair, it always is.
Now, tell me, she had a bit of a starring role, didn't she, Daphne 3, recently?
She was in the river chase in the last Bond film, The World Is Not Enough. Mercifully in the background, and only got wet. But she got very wet, and she was on screen for perhaps 3 seconds, so you'd see her if you didn't blink at the right moment.
The artist Hogarth is buried at the Riverside Church. They say Cromwell's head is there too, and Peter has plans as well.
We just passed St Nicholas's Church back there.
Yes.
And that's got quite a strong, well, pull for you, if you like, isn't it?
Yes. My grandfather was buried in the churchyard. And he started it, and then when my grandmother died in the 50s, she was buried in their grave. And when my parents died, they were buried in their grave. And my wife and I are booked in there. My wife's parents are there.
Do you find that reassuring that you've got your spot booked, if you like?
I do. I mean, I'm quite happy to go there when my turn comes.
I had to wait for the tide to drop for my next mission, so, well, only one thing for it, really. Nothing at all. This island is called Chiswick 8, where they used to harvest withies from willows for basket making. Now it's the site of a serious invasion of British territory, and one that's threatening the very structure of the Thames foreshore. The invader, the Chinese mitten crab. Apparently, it's a battle that cannot be won.
C2. This is the scene of the devastation you were talking about before.
Yes, this is the old Chinese mitten crabs. Yeah, you can see there the burrows. We're just having a look to see what we can find. Now, we've got a couple there. But yeah, this used to stretch right down towards the water. So I reckon we've lost about 6 or 7 foot of this. They weaken the whole lot, and the whole lot just drops in.
What is the story of the mitten crab? What's actually happened, and where do they come from?
Right, we first been recorded here in 1935. There was one crab reported. From about 1990 onwards, they've really taken off. And now they're just a part of the Thames, basically. Absolutely millions of them.
They say the crabs originally may have escaped from Chinese restaurants.
This is the male. And now you can see why they call them Chinese mitten crabs.
Yeah.
You see the fur on the nippers.
Incredible. And is this as big as they get?
No, that's about half size. Get them to about 4 inches across the carapace. And once they're that big, they look enormous because of these legs. They've got sort of quite long legs.
They're quite frightening-looking customers, aren't they?
Oh, they're quite aggressive, actually.
I'm right in saying, aren't I, that the Chinese eat them, don't they?
Yes, they do. Apparently, the delicacy of these crabs is the gonads.
Right.
Which develop only when the crabs are breeding, when they go down to the salt water. The gonads are about 2/3 of the body weight.
Really?
And apparently that's the bit they like. They were still importing them. A couple of years ago, we were wandering around fish markets in London and actually found boxes of imported Chinese mitten crabs. So they're obviously still quite a delicacy.
So there you go. If you fancy making a million, get into mitten crab gonads. They say it's a bull market. Luckily, Chris was going on to Richmond, so I catched a lift as we eased our way through suburban London. In Richmond, boat building is alive and well, thankfully for me, because one of its main practitioners needed a boat delivering upstream.
So Mark, tell me a bit about the boat building in Richmond and its history and how long it's been here.
Well, there's been boat building here certainly for 300 odd years. Mainly small boats, skiffs, punts, dinghies, canoes. We're building an 8-oar barge, which is rather unusual. It's all been done before. We've got some 18th century drawings and we're copying very nearly a barge in the Admiralty barge in Somerset House in London. We're basically building a Viking craft here. It's clinker construction, planks overlap each other, exactly the same as Viking craft. Really hasn't changed much on the Thames here. We use a certain bit of modern technology. We do use glue now. There's probably a handful, about a dozen people, I suppose, on the Thames. Still building traditional wooden boats, mainly motorised craft. I'm one of the few who specialise in unpowered craft.
Why have you got a passion for unpowered craft?
Because I'm not very good at engines. I don't particularly like engines. We do electric boats here, but my passion is rowing, and it's peaceful, quiet, it's rewarding. You'll find out in the next couple of hours.
Yeah. So this is the Tide-Ho?
This is Tide-Ho, yes.
And what about tides and all that sort of thing?
Well, by sheer luck, the tide is just beginning to make. Can you see? It was flowing that way a second ago, and the tide is now coming in. The gods are with you, the river god is with you.
I like that.
So, on your way.
There are, of course, many ways of getting going on the river. Keeping your oars in the boat is just probably one of them. But once you're underway, the splash and sparkle of the water is quite mesmerising. As I left Richmond and somehow London, Bohemia hoved into view. Eel Pie Island had its heyday in the 60s, but still attracts artistic types.
There's a lot of actors and artists and writers in Richmond Borough. I'd say, yes, it's probably got more than usual here on this island. It's rather a funny place because it used to be a holiday resort, and people now live in houses that were meant to be occupied for a weekend. So some of the smallest houses in London, I should think, are left here now. It became quite a sort of notorious venue for bands and pretty raving lifestyle.
Jazz and everything. Everybody got to know that they could play here, so they jam, and all sorts of people who are famous now jammed with each other. And then people came over and lost their minds, and lost their wallets and lost their virginity, and they go all glazed when you talk to them. They don't really remember much.
Anybody who remembers it wasn't there.
The island's detachment from the rest of the world attracted bands like the Stones and the Who, with all manner of fun and games. But I have no truck with bohemian decadence. For me, it's to bed in a bobbing boat.
This could be interesting. I feel seasick already.
Next morning, the neighbours and me got going after a surprisingly good night's sleep. I couldn't let a damp start to the day slow me down. I had to get 8 miles upstream to Molesey to deliver Mark Edwards' skiff. Overnight, it seemed to me the Thames had changed. Suddenly, it was gliding, peaceful. It had lost that unremitting urgency you get from it in London. I rode on through Teddington, a big landmark on my journey, because this is the end of the tidal Thames. Putney to Barnes, Chiswick to Eel Pie, and now Teddington. I was truly saying goodbye to London. From Teddington to the sea, the river flows both ways depending on the tide. From now on, I would always be travelling against the flow. Lockkeepers look after dozens of locks and weirs on the Thames. The whole system keeps sufficient flow and depth of water in the river to allow boats to use it.
See you again.
Sitting pretty on the bank, the infamous home of Henry VIII, Hampton Court, its location again emphasising the historical importance of the Thames. The river was the Royal Road. I had to drop the skiff off at Molesey Lock, where a great deal of excitement was in store. It's a total misconception that the Thames is dirty. In fact, children today will find that it's cleaner than it has been for at least 150 years. In the 1960s, pollution was so bad the Thames was effectively dead. There were no fish. Now there are 118 different species, including the good old salmon.
What we have here is a weir that the fish can't get over, and we build a fish pass to allow them to get upstream. And if you look down here where there's all this water tumbling out, this creates a lot of white water that the fish get attracted to from all the way along the weir pool. They swim up towards this water coming out and they hop up into the chamber we're standing on.
So if there is one, that's where it'll be?
It'll be in the end here, caught between 2 sets of grids to keep it in there. It's like a humane mousetrap for fish. So we drop all the water down in the trap area, and then we can see what fish we've caught.
And sure enough, there, after travelling the ocean currents of the globe, all the way from Greenland to Molesey, an 8-pound salmon.
What's happened is we've taken the fish out of the trap and we put it in this anaesthetic here, and it basically gets knocked unconscious. And then we take its length and its weight. We take some scales off it because from the scales you can tell how long it's spent in fresh water and how long it's spent at sea, so you know how old it is. We passed it through a little metal detector to see if it's got a little metal chip in its nose, which will tell us a certain batch of fish that we stocked. And then we put a little plastic tag in its back, a little red tag which has got a phone number on it and another number which is unique for that fish, so that if any angler catches it or anyone sees it in the river, they give us a ring, and that way we know where the fish has gone and the person who saw it gets a reward. And then finally we put a small radio transmitter inside it so that we can actually track it on its way upstream, and we can see how many weirs it gets up to and whether or not it makes it to the spawning grounds.
And are the salmon going back to the places where they've been put in the river originally?
We're hoping that this year will be the first year that salmon can actually make it to somewhere that they can spawn in the River Thames for probably about 180 years since the last time they did.
An average of about 150 adult salmon come back to the Thames every year, and it's hoped that number will keep on rising.
There he goes. Gone. Upstream. 2 lots down, 35 to go. And lots of fishermen. Good luck, mate. Excuse me, you're not going upstream by any chance, are you?
Yeah, we're going up through Shepton Lock. We're going to load the barge.
Are you? Any chance of me just catching a lift? I'm trying to get all the way up to the source.
We don't take passengers. You'll have to work your course.
That's all. I'm happy to work my course.
That's all right.
No
We'll
problem
put your
at all.
life jacket on and we'll get going.
All right.
Ready to go now.
Thanks very much.
The man with a mission to make me work was Johnny Police, who runs a river business. Naturally, he thinks the river is underused.
The water is a way of life. It gets in your blood, and mostly because it's such a small industry, we sort of help each other. And as much as we're in competition and we want to beat each other, if anyone's in trouble, we help each other out because we're fighting an environment, the water, and so therefore it's no point fighting each other. On the whole, they're a really friendly lot of people. It's their living. You don't do it for the money. When you think that we're carrying two lorry loads of ballast in that punt, so that means that there would be 2 lorries going down the road delivering that. We're taking it now from one site where we've done some dredging to a site where we need it as backfill, and we've got one small engine towing us. So.
We've heard a lot about how the cleanliness of the river has improved over the years. It looks mucky, it looks murky, it looks a bit like an old drain going down to the sea. I mean, that's how many people perceive it to be.
Yeah,
what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's a shame really, because that water now is clear enough to drink.
It's not.
Yes, I wouldn't hesitate to drink it.
Really?
Oh God.
There is a cup here. Will you do that?
Yeah, certainly. There we are. Up. You see how clear the water is?
It does look pretty clear.
Honest, taste it. It's better than any tap water.
Thames water?
Yes.
What do you think? Tastes like water.
As long as you don't sue me, get honey bugs. Come on, trip's over. Let's get him working, boys. That's the pump.
I feel a bit funny after that water. I've been eating this. What, onto the grass?
Yeah, just behind the steel angle iron. That's it.
The famous old river wound its way through Surrey, and I tracked its course past Shepperton and Weybridge, where Julius Caesar once crossed. Today, the young centurions just enjoy themselves, even if it is a tad fresh. You get a new angle on everything from the river. This, for instance, is what the bottom of the M3 looks like. Next time you're in a traffic jam, just think how close to tranquility you might be.
How many days have I been on this river? I can't remember. Day 10, is it? I've got absolutely no idea. Had a good day. No side effects from the Thames water I gulped down yet. Salmon heading upstream, that's a good thought. And tomorrow, winds abound. Nice sunset. Couldn't be better.
Right, okay, there's the heads, there's your bucket, there's your cloth, get on with it.
My favourite job, thank you very much.
Earning a lift was beginning to get too much of a theme for my liking. Still, she was a lovely boat. The Newnham, a steamer run by the French brothers, a pleasure boat company. And getting her ready for a day's work meant all hands on deck. Ivan Fear is the chief engineer. He's passionate about steam.
My mother showed me how to do this, you know.
Like that, see?
Oh.
All right, and then back the other way like that, and then you do both sides, and then you get all the clean bit like that, and do that, and do that.
Oh, God.
You never get it clean.
Not clean enough.
Not for the army.
If you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I'll be 70, well, I'll be 74 this year.
74?
Well, in October, yeah.
Shouldn't you have retired?
Well, I did retire when I was 65, but you know, it's a passion and it's a love, and I just love doing it. Yeah.
While Ivan put the lunch on, I yielded to more pressure and headed into the furnace.
Coming down. I've got the gear. Yeah, I feel the heat coming off that. How hot is it in there, Ivan?
1200 degrees. On a hot day, we get down about 160 Fahrenheit down here. It gets a bit warm, you know, but still keep your tie on, you know.
Yeah. Is that it? Are we underway?
Yeah, we're underway now.
Oh.
And so we left Runnymede, famous of course for the Magna Carta, and made our way towards Windsor Castle.
So Chris, it's a beautiful old boat, isn't it?
Fantastic, isn't it?
What's the story of it?
Well, she's built in 1898 and made her way to Oxford, where she plied for 70 years, doing the trip from Oxford down to Kingston. She was sold to a London company, and she worked on the Hampton Court to Westminster route for some time. And she fell into a very sorry state of repair, and I bought her as a scrap, really, and restored her to her former glory from using old photographs and a little bit of knowledge, I suppose.
Yeah.
Perfect. Now hold it there.
I'll be waiting for this moment all morning.
There you are. Magic. Look, just a job to hold on to that, but anyway.
But I'm eating half your lunch.
No, well, anyway, I don't expect you'll be able to hold it, it's so hot.
There you go. I've got a smaller bit than you.
No, that's all right, that's fine. Well, you have this bit.
No. Thank you very much.
You're all right with that? Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
No?
Best pasty I've ever had.
Yeah?
Progress had been good. As I drew into Windsor, 115 miles of the Thames lay between me and the source. After 9 days on the Thames, it was strange to be back on the road, but it was only brief. I was soon to be reunited with my beloved river via an interesting little number called a clam boat. Invented by David Rolfe, it's a trailer that unfolds into a boat.
There you have, one boat.
Find a slipway, park your car, and in 5 minutes, you're annoying the swans.
There we go. Very clever.
And that's just a little bit that we leave behind in the car.
So I was away once again, creeping ever nearer the source 115 miles away. My plan, to reach Oxford, 60-odd miles upstream, in 2 or 3 days, if I could. The Thames is like a living museum corridor of history. Even the railway bridges have their stories.
Okay, well, I'll cut the engine out here, because this is, the locals call this the sounding arch, and you'll see why in a minute as we drift back. It's the biggest brick span in the world, and it was built by Brunel. You get the most wonderful echoes.
As the evening drew in, I needed to stop for the night, and David dropped me on a small island on a stretch of river called Cliveden Reach.
Thanks, David. All the best. Thanks very much.
Sleep well.
Thank you. Will do.
It's an idyllic place and a well-kept secret. But you know, anyone can moor and camp on these islands, something that's relatively unknown to the millions of Londoners seeking solace close to home. Metropolis is just 50 miles away.
"7:30 a.m. There's a frightening sight. Slept pretty well though, getting used to it now. There are the facilities. Nice thick mattress, fluffy pillow. Lovely. First challenge of the day, this being an island. How to get across that?
Yep, there was only one thing for it. Time for a dip.
Refreshing is the word. Oh, silt. It's just thick mud.
You'd think it'd be better left to those born on it, but actually, it was fine.
Beautiful. It's like an SAS operation.
I was hoping these steps would lead to paradise. The stately home of Cliveden, now a hotel where the hobo was looking for luxury.
Hello. I'm hoping to book a room if that's possible.
I'm afraid we are fully committed.
Okay.
I'm terribly sorry.
Is there anywhere I can, spruce up and have a shave?
Yes, I think I can arrange that. That wouldn't be a problem.
Okay,
Yes.
fine, thank you. I'll just go in and have a coffee.
Certainly.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
This is the very pool where the Profumo affair began in 1963, the scandal that brought down a government. But more of that later. I had a more innocent assignation.
Oh.
A week and a half of sleeping on hard ground eased away as I was pampered to the extreme. It was a joy walking the grounds, not carrying the baggage. Well, you've got to give them something to do.
The house is on the site of a Neolithic village, and the path on one side of the garden down here is thought to be one of the oldest trackways in the UK, because the village was here, the water was at the bottom of the hill, so obviously people went from the village to the Thames to get the water, so hence they must have used that path. But Cliveden's for many years has been the home to dukes and princes and lords and ladies, and it's always had high society parties here. Stephen Ward, the main character at the centre of the Profumo affair, really, rented a cottage called Spring Cottage, just down by the Thames down here, and he invited a number of sort of young ladies up to the house to have a quick swim. And, well, I think the rest is history, and I don't want to get caught out too far on that one.
Oh, God. All sorts of shenanigans.
All sorts of hanky-panky, I'm sure, went on.
The hotel, of course, has a boat or two for guests, and so I continued on my way with a very large tea on the Thames. But where to start?
Great. There we go. Excellent. All right, thanks, guys. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Excellent.
Back in the real world, the kind tutors of Bisham Abbey Sailing School took me on as far as Hurley Lock on my first narrowboat. Locks are like bus stops to the river hitchhiker, where you can get on and off.
Thanks a lot.
And have a good trip for the rest of it.
See you soon.
Hurley Lock has been in the hands of Brian Webb for 29 years.
Brian, you're a legend on the river, aren't you? Why is that?
I don't know why I'm a legend, really. What I am is what you get. I've always stood up for what I believe is right. I suppose a part of that is the fact that for years and years I was a union rep or a staff rep. I worked on health and safety. I was a Samaritan for a while. I've been a foster parent for 25, 26 years.
Now tell me a bit more about that, because you've recently won yourself an MBE, haven't you? And that was awarded to you for a very good reason.
Well, that was a bit of a shock to the system, really, because you don't put yourself in the category of being somebody worthy of award. And when
letter came through, I thought, well, who on earth would have put me up, and why would they have put me up?
Did you actually meet the Queen?
Oh, I did. What a wonderful day that was. Something never to be forgotten. And she asked about the fostering, how many children, which is somewhere around 120 or so. And it's, you know, I've been so lucky, really. I mean, who else could live in a place like this? I mean, just look at it, in either direction. It's absolutely beautiful. I've been the luckiest bloke alive, really.
A lockkeeper's job is not just about opening and closing the locks. He or she has a responsibility to monitor and constantly adjust the river flow.
There we are, we'll have this one out. I'm going to open one of these boards, which is called a lasher board. Each board weighs 80, 90 pounds. Some are heavier, some are lighter, but if we set an average.
And why would you do it?
If we get too much rain, that's when we would start to operate this. And that could be at any time of the night or day. Middle of the night when it's pouring down with rain. And it's lovely to come out when it's raining down your neck and it's running out onto your boots.
What would happen if you didn't do it?
You'd get floods. And the people who live up in Henley, up that way, are going to be very pleased with me when they come down in the morning. And before they can cook their bacon and eggs, they've got to bail out the living room because they don't get very pleased about that. But anyway, look, this is how we'd lift it out. Very simply, if you like to take that chain and put it on the hook for me. Okay? And this one on here. And then it's simply body weight, if you'd care to push down on that.
The power that gives me, eh? I was astonished to find out that Hurley is also the focus for extreme sports nuts. Yes, white water on the Thames. The whole concept of gentle Father Thames winding away is shattered here, where the old dad's got attitude. So, enough of their showing off, time for me to have a go. And I was in good hands. Sean Baker spends his time doing insane things like kayaking down waterfalls. Just staying upright in the calmer parts was hard enough for me, but once I'd got my balance, the plan was to cross the current. Now, this is not something you can just come and do, but with expert help, it's incredibly exhilarating.
I spent my youth here from probably when I was 4 or 5 years old, something like that, in a rubber dinghy floating around on the calm and placid bits. And it wasn't until I was 10 years old that I discovered the white water down here. I mean, I'd had a lot of instruction by that stage through the school and that kind of thing. But yeah, with a bit of decent coaching, and you know where you're coming from, a bit of safety training, you can use, well, particularly this weir, because this is extraordinary, this one. And I mean, weirs aren't the safest things in the world, but with a bit of training, you can get some amazing rides on this. I mean, when you tell people where you go paddling, they think you're a whitewater paddler, but I'm a waterfall canoeist, and I train on the weirs on the Thames, on the River Thames. It's funny, isn't it?
Funny, but not easy. My efforts had a predictable outcome.
That's incredible. You wouldn't believe this river. You look at it and you think it's just serenely flowing along. It's vicious. How you can have so much fun in that is incredible.
Nearby Hurley Lock is a boatyard that's been around for centuries. Freebodies is a family business that makes beautiful, traditional wooden craft.
My grandmother had always said that we'd been at Hurley since for 300 years.
Really?
Yeah, but I found the earliest will I've got of one of our namesake being here died in 1533, and then 1642 John Freebody died, and he's down in his will as bargeman at Hurley. But while we've had associations with the river for a very long time, you can really only claim to have been doing this sort of thing, or what you see out in the workshop, since about the 1850s. In a way, our trade has become simpler, because people now appreciate beautiful things. I mean, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, even 25 years ago, there would be a lot of timber cruisers. Then, of course, fiberglass became fashionable and the wooden cruisers became a little bit of a liability to maintain. And so, as you can see by walking around here, most of our work comprises of building beautiful launches. They're not boats that you could have a holiday on, but when the weather's nice, I notice a lot of my customers get off in the weekdays if the sun's right, or a nice evening, and go out for a couple of hours, and that's how they like to enjoy the river.
I work in the office mainly. My sister Katie, she does a lot of the painting and varnishing, a lot of the finishing work, and that's actually one of the things we're quite well known for, is our standard of finish on the boats. And then there's Richard, well, he's very experienced, he builds the boats.
Do you think the kids have given the father a sort of modern direction, if you like, a way to take the business?
I like to think that we have some sort of effect, but he is very much his own person. He does do things his own way.
Peter's son Richard gave me a lift to Henley in one of the free-bodied slipper launches. The Thames was beginning to narrow as I moved upstream, passing Medmenham Abbey, once home to the Hellfire Club and its accusations of orgies and devil worship. I was too early for the Henley Regatta, but rowing is always very much in evidence in this pretty riverside town.
Henley really started as an inland port, and that goes back particularly to the 12th century and the trade in materials for London, whether it's building materials, grain going downstream, and it's about 4 days barge from here down to London.
And why did rowing become so associated and ingrained in the fabric of Henley?
Well, it's in the origins of the regatta, which was originally set up by the town to encourage trade. And although nowadays, I suppose, Henley divides in two, there are those that live for regatta and there are those that move out during regatta, it's still very much what we're famous for.
Ah, now this is interesting. This is a map of the whole Thames catchment area. Here's the estuary, and this is a journey I've made through London, around all these meanders, big bends there, through Windsor, and here we are now. Henley-on-Thames, just short of halfway.
I went on upstream to Mapledurham Mill, found in the grounds of a grand house, the inspiration for Toad Hall in Wind in the Willows. There's been a mill on this site for more than 500 years. And it's still worked by Thames Power today, producing tons of well-ground flour.
Tell you what, they weren't that tall, these millers, were they?
No, they were actually quite short in those days. In fact, this is the original outside doorway where the millers would have come and gone through. And when it floods the river these days, it comes into the mill and stops just at the doorway and goes back 9 times out of 10 times.
So they'd work that out?
They knew where the best place was. You can actually see the sort of worst parts of flooding markings on there. The worst flooding I've known in 20 years was 2 years ago for a sort of prolonged period of 6 months from October through to the following March. It was up to my knees in here. The river was up about 9'6". The doors were open, swans were swimming in, kingfishers. Oh, it's an amazing sight. There was no grass to be seen outside. And that went on for the whole 6 months of the winter.
Do you feel the sense of history and all those that have been here before?
Oh, definitely. You sort of, particularly when you're sort of on your own here and you stand and think about it, how many feet have walked along, how many hands have touched things, and amazing, wonderful place. It's completely steeped in history.
At the locks, you can usually find something healthy to buy.
Hello.
Hello there.
Can I have a cup of tea, please?
Yes, tea for one.
Just for one, yeah.
Any cakes with that or anything else?
Oh, I'll have a bit. What's that?
That is sponge cake.
Yeah, no, that looks very nice. That's chocolate. No, I'll have that one. That'd be very good. Excuse me. Hello. Hello. Having a nice day?
Very nice, thank you.
Good, good. I'm actually just travelling upriver. I just wonder if it's possible just to hitch a ride as far as Wallingford, is it?
We're mooring here tonight.
Oh, are you?
I'm afraid so.
Oh, dear. There we go. Let's ask the skipper. Excuse me? Is that your dad?
Yeah.
What's his name? Steve. Steve? Steve, hello, Steve.
Hi.
I just wonder, are you going up to Wallingford or are you staying here tonight?
We're probably going to do about another hour.
Are you?
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if it's possible to catch a ride because I'm heading upstream.
Yeah, sure.
Is that all right?
Yeah, jump aboard.
Fantastic. I'll get my gear. We're in. There we go. Can I pass those on?
Yeah.
Cheers.
Up here, families on holiday were a good source of lifts. The river's a fine, sociable place, everyone eager to help.
Camped up in Benson, which is a few miles south of Oxford, and it's really, really exquisite. The Thames is looking lovely tonight. It's evening sunlight. Tomorrow, Oxford bound, and going via a place called Whitnham Clumps, which is an old Iron Age fort overlooking the Thames. I'm looking forward to it. It's supposed to be something quite special. Hard to beat this.
Whitnham Clumps is the site of an Iron Age settlement. It's a powerful, mystical place, once described as having an ancient nearness, roamed by gods long forgotten. In 1844, a fella called Joseph Tubb spent days carving a poem into a young beech tree. The poem and the words have grown with time. It is a magical spot, but time for me to move on.
You're going back up to Oxford now?
We're going back up to Oxford
This is
now.
all right if I just come up with you?
Yeah, it's fine,
Up as
yeah.
far as Donington Bridge?
Yeah, Donington doesn't make any difference to us.
Brilliant, great. Excellent, thanks.
No problem.
The Thames gently washes through Oxfordshire, bordered by lush green country, meandering past pretty riverside villages. This was my 29th boat since setting off from the North Sea nearly 2 weeks ago. I still had 53 miles to the source and a great deal in store, not least the domes and spires of Oxford. Oxford, not just a university town, but a working city. Built up around a river tradition. But for me, after 2 weeks on the water, a chance to leave the boating to others and get on my bike. The centre of Oxford is an architectural paradise of honey-coloured stone. Home to one of the first universities in Europe. It was established in 1249. And amongst many other things, famous for its literary greats like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. And yes, the infamous Morris Oxford car. The city developed because of the Thames, or the Isis as it's known here. They cunningly called it Oxford because in the old days you and your ox could ford the river. It It was a welcome break from my trip, mainly an opportunity to catch up on a few things, most of all, my washing. Which, to be fair, could have walked in here on its own. I was soon on my way again, leaving the city and heading for the Cotswolds.
That's it, goodbye Oxford.
On through Port Meadow, which hasn't been farmed since William the Conqueror gave it to the community. And to the ghostly ruins of Godstone Nunnery, where lies a ghastly tale. Fair Rosamond of legend was educated here, where she met Henry II, who fell utterly in love with her. They say she was murdered, poisoned by Henry's wife, the jealous Queen Eleanor. Rosamond was interred here at the high altar. They say her ghost still walks these ruins. Less expectedly, the nunnery also fell into disrepute when many of the nuns became well known for prostituting themselves to Oxford students. There's noticeably less water in the river each mile I go now. At last the banks are truly closing in. I've decided to stop for the night at Ensham Lock, where they've been collecting tolls on the bridge for hundreds of years, one of 2 turnpike bridges surviving on the Thames.
It was under Act of Parliament of 1767, thanks a lot, King George III. The Duke of Abingdon was allowed to build the bridge, thank you, and collect tolls forever and a day, as long as he maintained the bridge in the meantime. Thanks. Because before the bridge there was a ferry, and there's a story about some of the King's tax collectors had a little accident, and the river was running very fast, and they all their monies were swept into the river. So King George says, well, that's no good, we'll build a bridge here, and he allowed, thank you, the Earl of Abingdon to do that.
Bikes are free, are they?
Bikes, yeah, well, actually 2p, but you try and get 2p out of a biker?
I'm into a good routine now. River by day, set up camp on the bank at night. I'm liking the vagrant life a lot. It's the next morning, and a good moment to assess my position.
So here I am here at Ensham Lock, by the toll bridge. About 45 miles to Thames Head, which means I need to press on. I need to be in Lechlade by tomorrow night. So I really need to push on today.
Time to get the morning bus to work. What shape or guise it'll come in is anyone's guess. But this looks promising.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Beautiful day. It is, yeah. Sorry to put this upon you, but I'm travelling all the way up to the source of the Thames Head.
Yes.
And I just want to get up to the next lock, to Pink Hill Lock, if that's possible. Are you...
Sure, we're going that way.
You're on your way?
Yes,
most welcome.
No tolls for going under the bridge, of course. As the landscape becomes less populated, some of Britain's rarer wildlife has a chance to prosper. It still needs a helping hand. Here, in a river flow monitoring station, a special compartment has been built into the roof. And a pair of barn owls have raised a brood.
The fact is that we need to record what these birds are doing, and we need to know exactly where they go, and if the bird's found dead or even alive at one of our boxes.
Do you know which one it is?
We know which one it is, and sadly one out of the 4 that we'll be ringing today will be the only one probably that's going to go through to breed next year.
So 25% success rate?
Yeah.
And how old are these?
These are
young
about
ones?
30 days.
About a
the
month,
oldest
just
one,
over a
yes.
month.
Yes.
Look at
Maybe
that.
a bit older
That's
than
incredible.
that. A bit older than that.
Look at that.
He's almost fully grown. If you look at the talons.
I see, look at
there, now. That's the difference. Now he's showing us what he really is.
Beautiful. What a beautiful thing.
Okay, now anywhere along here we should be lucky enough to find a run where the otters come out of the river underneath the fence, through the grass and into the reed bed. Ah, no, this looks like a great example. Yep, this is a fresh run. The otters come from the river and they've obviously gone back to the river because you can see the grass is crushed that way, but underneath the fence it's getting quite warm there, so I reckon it's using it quite a lot, and then it'll be making its way into the reed bed.
Not so long ago, otters had completely disappeared from the Thames. But now, as this astonishing footage filmed by a lockkeeper reveals, Tarka is back and slowly re-establishing numbers. There's a story in these parts about two young lovers who were struck dead by lightning. The incident encouraged the poet Alexander Pope to write, "Here lie two poor lovers who had the mishap, although very chaste people, to die of the clap." Boat number 33, another holiday interrupted. But they really didn't mind. And so to Radcott, home to the oldest crossing on the river, a 12th century bridge, and a fine place for me to end my day willing the float to suddenly disappear. Needless to say, it didn't. Bit like the hippo pool in Africa.
Like my bathroom. It's roomy, isn't it? Very nice.
A few miles upstream lies Kelmscott House, the country home of the great Victorian William Morris. The designer, writer and craftsman adored this heaven on earth. He's buried beside his wife Jane, close to the river he knew so well. This sweet stream that knows not of the sea, this far-off lonely mother of the Thames. And so now, well into Gloucestershire, I was finally passing through the last, or depending on your perspective, the first lock on the Thames. St John's Lock at Lechlade. The end very much now in sight. I tied on for the last time. From this moment onwards, I'd be on my own.
But anyway, thanks very much and have a great holiday. Thank you. The last lock. And there's old Father Thames. Here he is. Come a long way to see you, pal. He used to be at the source, actually, but you can see why they moved him. He was vandalised, so they brought him up here for safekeeping. Got new nose, new tash, new wrist, new hand. And somebody's had his big toe off at one point. His tum's a bit like mine, actually. Next stop, Lechlade up there. Go and sort out a canoe for the final mission. Let's go.
And so, the last leg, made possible by a kindly publican who'd found me a canoe. First, time to whittle down the kit.
Right, see what we've got. Don't need that, don't need that, don't need that, those, no, don't need those. Don't need that nice new map, definitely need that. Last section, medical kit, need that. Radio, listen to it once. Fishing rod, like to take it. No room, kettle, no room. Waterproof, might need it. Dry bag and bag. Shoes. Pack up. So that's it, is it?
This is it. The beauty of this is that you can pop it under your arm, just like I have. And you'll be able to go through. Isn't that amazing?
That's great. That is great. Yeah. Well, I'm going to have minimal kit.
You'll need minimal kit. And this is going to feel like part of your body.
Is it?
Yeah. When you put your body on the right-hand side, it'll turn right for you. Put the body on the left-hand side. This is going to be an extension of your rear end.
Glad to hear it. Are they easy to manoeuvre?
You'll get the hang of it. What I'm looking forward to is your first 10 minutes.
You'll have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to see that.
I'll do that. I'll do that. It'd be worth it to see you fall in.
Very funny. I hoped the final 22 miles would take 2 days, but I had no idea how hard it was going to be. The next day, full of expectation, I loaded up the canoe. Tim reckoned I'd be at the point where the river became impassable in about 3 hours. I would then have to walk.
Way to the front.
Recommended. Paddle on. Paddle on. To actually give yourself something to hold on to. Hold on. Don't like it. Yeah.
No, I'm all right. Just give you a little scare. A little scare. All right. I'll see what you mean. She's a bit creaky, isn't she? See you later. Past 12. Whew, going a few hours now. It's good, but it's become that much of an effort. I'm just kind of concentrating on the paddling and not seeing what else is around me until now. I've seen a few of these global structures, and of course what they are, I guess, is swan's eggs that have been washed away in high water from the nest. I've seen 3 or 4 this morning already. Look at that.
It was hard work, paddling against a strongish current and clinging weeds. I'd already gone well over 3 hours. I was totally alone on the river, just me and the reeds.
Time for a bit of a breather. It's getting much harder. Pretty tough. It's not only, as I say, the current, but this stuff that's overhanging. It's getting in the way. But there's a nice sight. Kempsford Church. There's Lechlade. So I've come down here. Kempsford, next church to see is Castle Eaton, and the source is over there somewhere. Long way.
It's incredible to think that this is the very same river that flows past Westminster, under Tower Bridge and on to fill a huge estuary. Truly the last navigable point of the river. The bridge at Cricklade, still 11 miles from the source. From now, the Thames is privately owned, but I'd sought permission from the landowners to keep going just as far as I could.
I need a machete.
It became more and more difficult with all but impassable reed beds or fallen trees blocking the way, but I was determined to stay on or in the water as long as I could. Not many have been this way before. Finally, it was getting silly.
Not gonna happen. End of the road. Time to walk. 7:30. 12 hours. End of a long day. So much for Tim's 3 hours or whatever it was. Look at the state of this. I've got all the flora and fauna of the Thames. My mat buried in there. My cat. Spiders and all sorts. Can't get one now.
Next morning, clean and refreshed, and the reed spiders out of my hair, I began my last day. Walking by a river I'd followed for 2.5 weeks, all the way from the North Sea. There are, of course, other claimants to the source of the Thames, but the only one for me is this one, the traditional source at Thames Head. Dry for much of the year, but the source nonetheless.
It's hard to believe that this is the River Thames. The very beginnings of the river. It starts to flow freely. It just dries up beyond a bridge up there, I understand. It's also where I say goodbye to the running water. Brought me a long way.
After 17 days, 230 miles and 39 boats, the final few yards.
You know, people say this is a bit of a feeble monument to the mighty Thames, but I don't know. I kind of like it. Its simplicity. It reflects the humble origins of the river. Can't get more humble than this. It's very peaceful. Good place to end.